Hey friends, Dawn here, welcoming you to the Soul Goals podcast and year number 3. This year, we are diving into expanding our perspectives, challenging our belief systems, and working the mental and emotional muscles of our souls. Though still all about growth and connection, this year finds opportunities to hear from people in our communities that have walked a path that might be different from our own, but that ultimately present us with the chance to look at a subject in a different light and learn other ways we could approach challenges in our own world. Let's get to it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Goals podcast. My name is Dawn, and right next to me, I have the lovely Rhonda Lewis, hailing all the way from Defiance, Ohio, quite a ways from where I'm at in Nashville. But I'm so glad to have Rhonda joining us today. And just as a recap of the way the podcast is operating in year number 3 that we're in, we're taking a subject each week, and we are opening that subject up with people that have experience with the subject so that we can learn a little bit more about, something that we may not have known about, something that we may have preconceived notions about or different thought patterns about, in an effort to hear what it is that someone is walking through in that path, in that process, or in that subject. So today, I wanted to have Rhonda come on today and talk about the subject of hospice. And this is such a near and dear subject to my heart. My dad was in hospice actually at your facility there in Defiance, probably about 4 years ago now, 3 years ago actually. And it's just so touching to me when we were there, because knowing what we were facing, you took such great care of my dad, but you also took such great care of our family. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand what hospice necessarily is. So I'm excited to have you come on and give more of the background of that and what your path has been through it. But before I let you jump into that, I just want to say you have been a registered nurse for, you said since 2001, right?
Mm-hmm. I have, yeah.
Gosh, and we're in 2026. That's a long time, Rhonda. That's great.
It went fast though.
And it went fast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the typical thing that I hear from most nurses that are engaged in their profession and that really love what it is that they do, because you have to love what you do to be in that profession for so long. I know.
Yeah, you do. You really got to have, it's your purpose, to get out of bed every day, your reason. And that's been mine for the last 23 years.
Wow.
In hospice.
Yeah. Well, and you've been also a nursing supervisor there at CHP, which is Community Health Professionals there in Defiance, Ohio. So it's the Defiance Inpatient Hospice Center there in Ohio. And I, like I said, my dad was there years ago, and my heart for what it is that all of you do, it's just such a genuine and authentic thing. And the dignity that you bring to the people that are in their last days it's so loving and it's so touching. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for what it is that you do. It's really, it doesn't go unnoticed. I think sometimes we notice it, but we don't say it. So if you didn't hear it today, I'm letting you know today. Yeah. You're appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what can you tell me about hospice care that many of our listeners may not even understand about it? Because I think when somebody hears hospice, they have this set of ideas about what they believe it is. But I want to hear firsthand from someone that's been in it for, you said 23 years. What is the idea and the background of hospice and that level of care, if you will?
Well, I think, for me, hospice, it's a special time in somebody's life, just as much as the first day of life or birth. When you leave and you pass, it's just as special as when you're born. You need all that dignity, all that family around you. To be, just still have a voice where you can talk, and say what you want, not have somebody tell you what you need to do. It's, providing that holistic care for them. So we have the chaplain, social worker, the nurses. If you tell us you need something, that's what you get. You want your privacy, that's what you get too. So it's very much letting you have your own voice as to what medications you want to take or what you do not want to take also. So
right.
it's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. And firsthand, what we received with my dad was
Mhm.
so much everything that you just said. Absolutely, to a T,
Yeah.
what you just said. What was the moment that drew you to hospice care?
I thought that, there's so much of a need that people get on too late in life. I think they get on at the last moment, which I think that draws a lot of misconceptions about hospice also, because they get on really at the last moment,
Mhm.
when things may be declining, rather quickly. And then they think, well, yeah, you just go on hospice for that reason. But really, it can be a lot of help. I wish they would feel like hospice is help.
Yes.
You get a lot of help. You still get treatments. If you need an antibiotic or something like that, you still get your treatments. We
Right.
still respect you as a person, you know,
Right.
and I think that's pretty important.
Right. Well, I love what you said about conveying the birth and the death, the special time that the passing out of this body is just as much as coming into your body. And I think a lot of us feel, I know me for one, if you think about people that are passing out of your life or that you have lost,
Mhm.
I mean, every circumstance is a little bit different. Obviously, we all have our feelings and our emotions about what that brings for us.
Yeah,
But I think too, what that gives, I think that connotation between birth and death and the celebration of life is both ends of the spectrum. I think is super important. And I like what you said about giving a voice, allowing that patient to have a voice and allowing the family to be present and be a part of that. And really, I think it's almost like you're a chain link as a hospice nurse, right?
yeah, we are. We want to be that person that's there for them, no matter what, and I think a valuable lesson a family member's taught me is, you know, they're having a hard enough time. They need somebody to be there that can be a pretty strong person, a pretty strong nurse, to know the boundaries and be there for them. You know, they're having a hard enough time. So they need that person not to get too involved, but involved enough to know that there's the support there for them.
Yeah. And how do you know that as a nurse? I mean, there's this almost like an intuitive sense that you have to move through in those experiences?
You do. You have to be pretty in tune to how everybody is so different and how they feel and how much contact you want or don't want and how far to go with that. You got to respect the family's boundaries too.
Yeah, absolutely. How
Yeah.
did you learn that? Is it just a process?
Well, I had a mom tell me one time when I had a child, and we had another person come in and they were having a hard time because it was a small one. And she said, I can't comfort the people that come in here. I need them to be there for me. And it was like, well, yeah, you really do. But, as a nurse, you kind of keep it together. And then when you leave in your car, or if you're a home nurse, or go home, things look a little different for you at that point. But, while you're there with that family, it's really important to be there
Right,
and hold it
right.
together. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you have moments where I mean, obviously you're human and you leave the facility or you leave someone's home and it's very impactful for you?
It very much is. Some of them, you think about them for quite a long time. They're pretty
Mhm.
special people. But in the long run, you got to kind of save yourself too. You got to keep those boundaries, which is pretty important to the family and the patient and to myself or
Yeah.
nursing. Um, but you got to get yourself some downtime and some step away. But I will say I've never been thanked so much in my life than I have in hospice, from families,
Mm.
patients. Yeah. So they thank me every day, you know,
Yeah. Well, and
because
that's such a gracious thing, you know?
yeah, they're very grateful. I had a home patient that told me one time, I went in there and I seen she was pretty tired. And I said, you don't have to talk to me today. And she whispered, thank you. And that was the last, thing she said. So
Oh,
it, you got to be really in tune as to what to say, what not to say, and to be able to recognize those nonverbal, cues to people that they
yeah.
give you.
I know when my dad was there was a series of days where you just knew. The nurses said they could tell, like, he has probably 3 more days left, and that's what we're looking at the outside
Hmm.
based on his trajectory and what's happening. And I wouldn't have known that. I mean, I know the experience that I had when I was there before I had to fly back home where I live, and saying knowing it was gonna be my last goodbyes. I remember having a very brief conversation with him, and we can get into this later, but I remember going, "Wow, how do they how do you know that?"
Yeah. I think you get a sense, you get a feeling of that as to, sometimes they won't be talking as much. They won't really want to be eating. They'll want it
Mhm.
more quiet, typically. There's other physical signs like the kidney output and things like that. Um, the heart rate. Um,
Yeah.
what I've learned most, I think, is every experience is different.
Mm.
Every individual is different. They don't actually follow such a pattern in a general pattern, but all the experiences are different.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
unique.
and I think having to adjust to all of that is gotta be. I mean, I think back to your emotional well-being and your emotional health as a nurse, being surrounded by this kind of life and this kind of passing that you're dealing with every day in your job,
Yeah.
and knowing what you need to do to take care of yourself with that.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it just means so much to me. I get out of bed every day and, just to make a difference, just to make
Mm,
a difference. My mom passed away and, it's still emotional, 15 years ago. But,
mhm.
I make a difference and I always say, I promised her that I would do that, to continue doing that. So
Yeah.
I think that's important to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your first hospice experience when you were new in the process.
Oh, oh yeah, that was pretty overwhelming.
Oh gosh. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine.
But I will say, even at that, and as hard as I tried, I was a home nurse at that time. It was pretty overwhelming. So, you got backup, you got support. But
Mhm.
as a new nurse and a new hospice nurse, boy, yeah, yeah. Um, I'm so glad I was there for the families, but now I look back and like, oh, yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, right? And then I think to myself, if you had that kind of experience, that overwhelm, what was it that made you go, "This is my purpose?" Like, what was it that moment? Was it moments past then? Was it moments before then maybe?
I think it's kind of cumulative, but I've thought about it a lot. But I really think that God puts us in a place where He wants us to be in life, and that's kind of where we end up.
Mhm.
When I was out of school, I was going to go into accounting or law enforcement, and not a thought of nursing. So,
Wow, wait. Okay, that's an interesting much different. So what was that trajectory for you? I'm interested here.
yeah, I went for accounting, was going to go law enforcement, and I ended up, I thought, well, I'll go in a factory. So I worked in a factory for 15 years. And yeah, I ended up in nursing, and I'm not quite sure how,
Ah,
but
well, what it tells me is that your starting point isn't necessarily your ending point.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think you've got to live some of those life experiences to find what it is that your real true inner purpose is, that God has kind of put you where you are.
yeah. There's probably nothing more true than that. Yeah,
Mm,
I think we
mm.
end up where He wants us to be, and yeah,
Absolutely. What do
yeah,
you think are some of the misconceptions about hospice? Because if I say the word hospice, some people think, "Oh, it's just where you go to pass away." Okay, but there's more to it. And me seeing that with my dad, I mean, trying to explain that to somebody. So maybe you could just give us a basic overall definition of what hospice is.
yeah. So I think some of the misconceptions are, like you said, they go there shortly past, they take away all their meds, they don't get any food, they don't get any water, that kind of stuff. That's all really not true at all. Um, Hospice, they eat and drink whatever they can tolerate and whatever they swallow. But if they can't swallow anymore, it's not really safe to get food and water in them. So we do the oral care. The medications they can take whatever they want. If they want to
Okay.
take their vitamin C or whatever, heart medicines, they can take those.
Hmm.
If they get an infection, like for a urinary infection or a pneumonia, and we think an antibiotic will make them feel better, we'll order that. So they're
Hmm.
still getting treated. They're getting treated like a human being. They're getting treated for their symptoms. But, I think why those misconceptions are is because they wait too long to get onto hospice. They'll start
Mm.
right at the last minute, or we'll get them from the hospital, and it's very late. And
Yeah.
they're already, in that dying process
Yeah.
by the time they
And
get referred.
yeah. And then it's like, what do you have? What kind of capability do you have as nurses in the hospice program to like making them comfortable, their care of life, and like you said, treating the symptoms that they're having. I think, I think for me, when families reach out, like when our family knew, when the doctor had that conversation, that hard conversation with my mom and my brothers about what was going to happen, where he felt my dad would be best suited at this point,
Mhm.
I think there was some hesitation because it's almost like, well, I think we know what this means. And so wrapping our heads around what that really was, I think was a little bit challenging. Maybe people are trying so hard to cling on to life in the hospital because they know if they quote, I'm putting it in air quotes, give up on
Yeah.
trying to save themselves instead of just allowing the process to unfold and have those really special moments with their loved one, knowing that this end is happening inevitably.
Yeah, well, it's pretty devastating for somebody to say the word hospice to you because you feel like this is a final thing. And, the body, everybody's going to be there at some point. We
Mhm.
are all going to be there at some point. When that occurs, we just don't know. But it is all about giving dignity and respect and the symptom management that you talked about. I always say you can manage those symptoms with a safe dose of medication, or you can hold it and you will watch them suffer, you
Yeah.
know. So that safe dose of medication when they need it for those symptoms is, really important.
Yeah.
You know?
And then I feel like you're giving the families and their loved ones that are around them these really special opportunities to spend time with their loved ones before they pass, and having them have, I mean, to me, that's priceless. What that is priceless.
Yeah, you only get one chance at it,
Mhm.
to be here, to spend time with them and recognize, maybe they want to be alone or want it to be quiet. That is a hard place to be when you're passing and you have a bunch of people around you sometimes.
Yeah.
People are okay with it. Some of them wait until everybody leaves
Yeah.
and then they quietly pass. We've
How
seen
do you
ways.
handle that? Speaking of which, when you have, like, when you know that your patient really needs that quiet time, how do you address that when you have a large number of family in the room and without, again, air quotes, offending somebody by
Yeah.
saying this is what we feel is the best interest of the patient right now and serve their loved one that they don't want to leave.
Yeah. Well, it does take a process. It kind of gets to establish a relationship with them, talking with them, being pretty gentle with them, but um, really being honest with them,
Mm,
and telling them, they don't have to leave at all. But it might be best to kind of keep it just a little bit calm, you know. And
yeah.
it does help, and they'll thank you for that, and they'll sit quietly, and it does help the situation also.
Yeah.
But
I love what you said. It's being honest. And it's being honest though with a certain level of care and grace that's attached to it.
oh, certainly, yeah, yeah, you didn't want to be abrupt and say that kind of stuff, but if you can, you got to put yourself in the family shoes too. It's pretty devastating to them. And if I have one big thing I've always learned, it's the patients, it's the families that having the hardest time with that patient leaving. It's not the
Mm,
patient. They're okay with the process, probably 99% of the time. it's the families that are struggling. Um, they have the emotional breakdowns. It's almost never the patient.
Yeah.
It's the families that are kind of watching the process.
Do you think there's a piece of that patient that almost hangs around and stays and really struggles to let go, to let themselves move to the next space when they have that emotional attachment connected to them like that?
Oh, absolutely. When we talk with the families, we say, they're worried about you. You need to tell them that you're going to be okay. And we will often see that there's a big sigh of relief on their face, and they do pass shortly after that a
Wow.
lot of times.
Wow. That's such a gift. I mean, again, I just think I look at you, Rhonda, and I think you're such a chain link. The people, you and the wonderful people that do the job that you do, you have so many different hats that you have to wear in that process. And you have to really be very specific and very intentional about what it is you say and how you move through your day.
Yeah, you really do. It's important. We've got a great hospice physician here, and the team, the chaplain, the volunteer coordinator, and all the nurses. I mean, they really put it together.
Hmm.
So, hospice is about bringing a team in. We'll have our pastor come and pray with them, or just talk with them if they're not, too religious. He'll just be there for support too. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
Tell me what a typical day for you would look like. Because obviously, we know that all the patients are different and the circumstances around them are different. But if you had to give someone that may be thinking, I might be interested in this profession, I might be interested in researching or making that move that direction from my current nursing job, I want to do something different. I want to be of purpose. What would you explain a regular day as a hospice nurse would be for you?
Oh, I would say a big thing is communication, being able to recognize those signs and symptoms, go in there and make sure and put yourself, you got to have the ability to put yourself in that patient's position and that
Mhm.
family's. Whatever you do on a daily basis should be the same thing that the patient is allowed to do. Brush some teeth, kind of get cleaned up for the day, look presentable. We put everybody in a nice shirt or a gown, a hospital gown, or not a hospital, but a nightgown. So
Mhm.
they wear the regular type of clothing, and pain medicine, quiet, or special TV shows. But the nurses are really going and doing their charting on symptom management and what
Okay.
they can do for the patient and the family. So
Yeah.
maybe they can get them a water or coffee, sit with them for a while.
Mhm.
Call the chaplain. So basically, their job all day is symptom management and helping the families. Maybe calling them, telling them that, hey, there's been a change, keeping them
Yeah.
updated, that kind of thing. But
Yeah. Well, I love what you said. And I think this brings a lot of merit and foundation to the whole idea. It's as a hospice nurse, you have to put yourself in their shoes. And I think I want to just reiterate what you said about the things that you would normally do. You want your patients to have those same experiences, the dignity of watching the show that they may want to watch and brushing their teeth and wearing something nice, having a nice shirt on, having a nice gown on.
yeah,
I think that is so overlooked that I like that was a big thing for me that I learned when I would come in to visit my dad. He would have a nice he'd have his nice shirt on, his hair would be combed, he
yep,
brushed his teeth, and I'm like, "Okay." It almost felt like there wasn't it took the edge off the fact that we knew what was happening to him, but it made it easier for us to have that experience with the person that we knew, that we've always known.
yeah, yeah. And it's treating them like a human being that they're still alive, that they're not a patient kind of maybe in a hospital and they're
Mhm.
rushing around.
Yeah.
This time.
W What has this process and being a hospice nurse taught you personally about death?
I think mainly in life is to have patience. You know, Nothing's really that big of a deal
Oh,
in
wow.
normal life. Everything's going to be just fine. And it all works out. But yeah, teaches
Yeah.
you a lot of patience. And a lot of what, my day's not that bad because there's other people. You know.
Wow, what a perspective. I mean, that just gave me chills when you said that. I think it's something that we again overlook because we get so wrapped up in our own stuff, you know.
Yeah, yeah, we can do that. And then,
Mhm.
we stop and step back a minute and it's like, oh yeah, you don't know
Mhm.
what person in the grocery store you're walking by has just went through, they could have just lost somebody, a child or, a mother or a dad. So not just in the building, but even outside in life, it teaches you, it's pretty short, it goes fast, um, but we can have patience with everybody.
Oh, that's great, Rhonda. Like
Yeah.
I need to hear that. I'm going to play this back numerous times and listen to that. What you just said because it's so applicable for so many of us when we get in those places.
Yeah.
And having that firsthand view of that experience for you day in and day out, I think is just it's really such a gift, you know? I look at that as a gift for you.
Yeah, I feel like it's a gift. My life has been blessed. CHP is a great company. I can't say enough about it. They're always there to support you. And the
Mhm.
patients, they'll tell you it's always the patients first. They're nonprofit. Um, so whatever we've ever needed for our patients, we've always gotten it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I want to ask you obviously, the harder parts of your job are watching the people that you have formed relationships with pass away. But is there anything specifically that you could pinpoint for yourself personally along your career that has been a harder moment than another, maybe?
I think it's for me myself, I think it's with the younger ones, the
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
or younger adults. So,
And I don't think about that because I think my dad was 80 something years old, 82 years old, and I think that's just how we evolve. And you don't again, it's that whole perspective. I think everybody needs to know,
yeah.
life and death happens all the time.
Yeah, well, yeah, when you see the little kids, they've lost their mom or their dad, yeah, that is tough. That is tough.
Mhm.
I say you do carry that for quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's obviously very impactful for you, but is there a way that you have found that you can kind of let some of that intensity go so that you can then do your job or you don't think you do your job great, but I'm talking about live your life as Rhonda, not just Rhonda the nurse, but as Rhonda.
That's been a little bit of a challenge.
Mm,
I spend a
okay.
lot of time here, but
Yeah.
I've I've ran 4 marathons.
Oh
Do stuff
my
like
gosh.
that. Yeah, yeah. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Travel stuff like that. I get my downtime, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, downtime, super important, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever experienced you said you're there a lot because obviously you're a supervisor there at the
Uh-huh.
facility too. So you have a lot of different things that you're managing, not just patients, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So do you ever feel or have you ever felt like you're on the verge of burnout in this career?
When I did home hospice, I really did. That is a lot. I always view that, and I've told many people, home hospice is like running a marathon. Here at inpatient, where you've got the support, um, that's like running a 5K. So you got 26 miles versus 3 miles. It's there, but yeah.
But
But
you have the support. That's it. Yeah. I love how you called it the marathon versus the 5K. That I can totally see that. Yeah.
yeah, because at home you'll go there and that family has that care 24/7 on them. A nurse just visits a couple times a week, and there's
Mhm.
really only so much you can do as a nurse at that point. You're there a
Mm.
couple times a week. You see the family burn out. They're not sleeping, and they really draw you in. They draw you in to almost like you're a family member. They set date
Mm.
on your visit. They'll call you. They'll you know got something to drink, and emotionally you're more attached, I think, at home hospice, because when they're at home on hospice, they get on the program earlier, you know so they can be
Right.
on hospice at home. They've been on there maybe a year, so you've spent a year visiting them,
Yeah.
so you become more close with them in their own environment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I can see how that would be a thing for sure.
yeah, it's a real thing. Yeah.
And then I
It,
think about where you are now, and there's such a level of support. You have nurses with you and standing beside you that you can refer to and you can lean on as well.
yeah, and we can give that family support. We can be there for them. They are not going to have to give morphine and the medications that they're really kind of scared of. You know.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah, that's
yeah.
a great point because I think about that if I've had friends that have had their loved ones that have been in home health care and I've told them, I'm like, I don't know that I could do that. I think it would be very, very challenging to have to do the medications, to have to do the constant care without anyone helping. So, but then again, like what you said, that emotional attachment when it's just you going in, I think that's a big thing.
It is big. The home health nurses, they deserve a lot of credit and respect. That's a tough job. That's a
Yeah.
tough job too. And those families, your hearts just go out to them. You know, it's a
Yeah,
lot
and
for
it's
them,
something well, it's something I don't think we think about either.
right?
I think it's such a necessity. Isn't that interesting as we're talking? It's just really such a huge thing to think about the things that we take for granted, the professions that we know are there to help us through certain periods, very integral seasons of our lives,
Mhm.
are things that we don't think about, that we don't put in front of our faces until maybe it's in front of our face and we have to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody talks about hospice until it's time they mention it, and it's time to be involved in their life in one way or another. And then it's like, oh, they don't think about it or talk about it until that point, typically. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah.
If you, without sharing specifics
Mhm.
in people, is there any specific patient that had a really profound impact on you personally in your 23 years of hospice care so far?
Yeah, I had a couple of them, and yeah, I could say that it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough
Mm,
because they do affect you, and they make you a different person. I think you know.
yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably, it seems to me like you're constantly learning life lessons every day.
Yep, and they can teach it to you. So
Oh,
you know,
wow.
it is a blessing, though I would say. But some of them have just make an impact on you that you'll remember them forever. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
What do you see your patients as a whole, majority, what kind of conversations are they having when you know they're at the end of their life, when you know the time is very, very critical at this point?
Most of them, like the older ones, no, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm doing it. But there's a lot going on that they're thinking about that you can tell. You can
Okay.
tell what's going. There's something that they're thinking about, and I'm okay. I don't need anything. I don't need anything. Some of them, that were in the war, like especially Vietnam, we see that area. They will talk about some of the things that they see,
Mm,
but not a lot. You get very little. So, a lot of their conversations are just very quiet and very peaceful,
yeah.
is most of the things, and they don't want to be a bother. So
Mhm.
it's mostly the families, I think, that it's almost, like I said, 90% of the time you're there for the families.
Yeah.
The
And
patient,
again,
yeah,
total misconception.
yep,
I think hospice, I don't think family support until we were in it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this
yeah,
is such a gift, such a blessing for all of us.
yeah.
Um, Let me just talk a little bit about when my dad was at your facility
Hmm.
and I had flown in from Nashville and I was staying there for a few days, knowing that we talked to the nurses and knowing what the kind of the trajectory where he was headed and how roughly how many days he had. And I remember sitting with him and he was asleep and he woke up and he looked up and he was like, Ralph? And I went, oh, who are you seeing? He was clearly seeing his brother who had passed away years earlier.
Yeah,
And it dawned on me that I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Someone is visiting him, someone from
mhm,
his family that he cared for deeply. And he said it almost like surprised, like, what are you doing here? And I just held his hand and I was like, you know what? It's like, I get chills again thinking about it. And it made me cry, but in the best possible way, because I feel like that was such a blessing for him to go. If there was any fear inside of him, like that fear could be allayed because he was seeing somebody that was there with him in his life,
Yeah.
almost coming to get him. Do you have those experiences, or have patients that will talk about that, or families that will talk about that experience with you?
Yeah, quite a few. They'll have, full on conversations and stuff and see people that have passed. And that's one of the indications that time would be near. They start seeing that. But, I feel that must be a comfort to see that person, whether to see their mother or their grandmother, that has passed. And so a familiar, awesome face, and somebody that will provide that comfort. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gosh.
there's been that.
What are maybe some of the regrets that you hear from your patients? If they talk to you, say when their family's not around, say when it's at night and you're administering medicine to them, or you're sitting with them and they have candid conversation with you, what are some of the things that you're hearing them in their last days saying? Maybe, like I said, about regrets, or things that they had hoped for, or that they wanted, or in any capacity along that line.
Some of them, they'll say, I spent too much time at work. I wish I wouldn't have done that, and things like that. But I feel like most people have come to terms by that point. And, I think they're pretty satisfied at that point when they become at the end of life, in sort of peaceful state, that they've done. Um, I think people know when they're going to pass. I think they know probably 6 months or more before they're going to pass.
Oh,
I think they
wow.
feel it inside. They'll
Yeah.
tell people, I don't think I'll be here next year. And they're correct, because
Rhonda.
yeah, um,
Yeah.
yeah, my mom told me that. She says, I won't be here next year. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? Yeah. And so
Wow.
I think you stay in like a state of denial when it's somebody that is close to you. Oh, you just need one more antibiotic, or you just need one more scan. We'll get over this, one more, surgery. That's not the way it works. So I think
Right.
but yeah,
Gosh. Well,
yeah,
and wrapping our heads around it, I think, is the biggest piece. And like, as we're sitting here talking, and if you're listening to this, but you're not watching it on YouTube, I want you to tune in on YouTube and just look at Rhonda for a second, because you are one of the most peaceful and calming individuals I've ever met. And I have not met you face to face. If I have met you, it was like when my dad, like when we were in and out of the facility. But looking at you and your demeanor, I feel like the gift that the hospice nurses can bring, again, we talk about the families, right? The families as well as the
yeah,
patients, that calm demeanor and that presence to allow them to have those conversations, to say, because I can think about, just like me, when I just said, oh my gosh, 6 months ago, they knew inside of themselves that my time was nearing. For them to have the ability to say that to you, they have to be very, very trusting and open, and just vulnerable with you, like at that place.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that is one of the reasons people get on hospice so late is they have a hard time telling that person that they care so much about that, yeah, this is really happening. This is how I really feel. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
They
And
don't
we
want to tell them.
Right, right. We touched on it a little while ago, about the families that are emotional and hanging on to that connection, and not and then the person that is in the process of passing has a struggle, or it's harder for them to let go. And
Absolutely.
like, how do you watch that? How do you help that? How do you, without stepping on someone's toes? I mean, because obviously you're seeing this all the time.
Yeah, and it happens. It does happen a lot. It's again just handling it and talking to them like they're worried about you. They need to know that you're okay, and once they know you're okay, they're going to be all right.
Yeah.
And they'll pass peacefully. But yeah,
Mm. What do you see is the most needed, most important piece for for those that are passing away at the end of their life? What is it that you have seen over the past 20 plus years of this practice that has been, this is what those patients that are passing out of their bodies really need, really desire, and really it benefits them the most?
Well, I think, and again, going back to that, everybody's so individualized. Maybe they need that chaplain to come. Maybe they need to tell that family member needs to tell them that it's okay. Maybe they need to have their pain under control.
Hmm.
And once they get under control, it's easier to rest. You
Mhm.
know, maybe they're waiting on to see somebody from that's enlisted in the army or they haven't seen for 20 years. Maybe they're waiting on that special person that they're wanting to see. So I think everybody is so individualized. There's always different reasons what they need. But yeah,
Right. But I feel like the bigger thing that I'm hearing you talk about is they need that understanding and that calmness and that dignity to the last days of their life.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When I was in home care, you could see some instances where there'd be a house full of people where you couldn't even move and the noise and they'd be that person in the middle of the room and it's like, yeah, this isn't going to be good.
Oh.
It would be a struggle. And oftentimes it was. So,
And their passing is a struggle. Like
yeah.
letting go is a struggle,
Mhm.
but then the passing itself becomes this arduous process instead of this just beautiful release that death can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you tell somebody and give them permission that, yeah, we're going to be okay, we're going to be all right, and it's quiet and they know whoever they want is there, um, it's a much easier passing for them.
Gosh.
But yeah.
It's peaceful. I think that's the big thing that I'm hearing you say. It's just this peacefulness.
Uh huh. Yeah. Um, and for the family too, just to bring them up quiet. Sometimes we have family meetings and to give them a chance to talk and away from the room. And I think that eases it too, because then
Okay.
they can get all their thoughts out. They can talk, gives them a platform kind of to see what their thinking is and get all their questions answered. And I think that helps too, is a process.
Have you ever thought that you are basically a therapist for families? I mean, you just said, yeah, a family meeting. I think, golly, you're carrying so much. You're almost like you're a container for their stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest skills that you need to have in hospice is to be a good listener, to be quiet and let them go. And once they have, and maybe they need to say it 2 or 3 times, but if they do, or 3 or 4, once they get that point, they start to feel much better. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's beautiful. What do you wish people understood about hospice and the process, whether it's maybe someone that may be preparing to go into hospice, or maybe it's a family member that has been given this information that this is the right path at this point, and they may be scared about it, or um, they think inevitably this is the direction we're going to have to go, but they're just unsure. What would be your biggest thing that you would want people to understand? The biggest takeaway?
I would want them to understand that this is your help. We can't do anything about the end of life coming, but this is your help, and you're going to need help there along the way. And it is it will be the help that you're going to need in a lot of difficult situations about to come, because not every situation is easy, not every death is easy. So that hospice is there to help. We can't stop it, but I tell people, when you are all done where they can't do anything at the hospitals, no more tests, no more IVs, no more treatments, you're going to want somebody there, either to answer your questions, give you advice, that kind of thing. So I think hospice is really there to help.
I love that. Yeah. It's your help. It's your lifeline basically. You just
Yeah.
take it. You can accept that. It's there for a reason. And
Yep.
I think the bigger picture for me in thinking about on having this conversation with you today is thinking about those integral pieces that are happening around our lives that we are completely unaware of. Hospice, um, home health care,
Yeah.
so many different things that are integral and that have to happen and that go on happening that we are unaware of.
Yeah. And until the time comes when you're kind of in crisis mode. And then when you're
Yeah.
in crisis mode, when it gets the last minute, like whether you're at the hospital or some things happen, and then you're all told this and not expecting it, then you're in kind of a crisis mode, a fight or flight kind of mode. And that's when you want somebody to be there for you, you
Yeah.
know, to give you
And
advice and maybe help you.
right. And like you said earlier, being honest and communicating, those are such big pieces.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I've had several conversations with people, and I talk to them about some of the signs and symptoms that people go through, and maybe it's the trajectory, of the labs and the things that are happening. And they said, "Oh my God, I didn't have any idea this was happening and this was coming." So sometimes, that honesty will go a long ways to
Yeah.
help, you know.
Wow. Yeah. And when you have those conversations, I mean, I just imagine you have to be so gentle with those people because there's so much emotion involved in that for them, whether it's the patient or the family.
Yeah, you really do. And sometimes it's just kind of saying, okay, what were they doing a year ago versus today? What were they doing 6 months ago versus today? Oh, they were out driving, but now they can't get out of bed. They
Mm,
were eating a full course meal. Now they've lost 30 or 40 pounds and they're not eating. So you can kind of see, yeah, they've been in the hospital, in and out, they've had infections. So all of that leads you to tell that, their health conditions, taking that turn.
right. Right. And I think, again, it's just wrapping our heads around the fact that, just like you said at the beginning, it's very special. I mean, I think we can put labels on death being something that is hard, negative, not wanted because we are so emotionally wound to it, but it is an inevitable experience that, like you said, we're all going to experience. We're all going to go through, and we can fight it or we can flow with it and allow it to unfold even in the harder pieces. And what I hear you saying is during those harder pieces, this is your help. Like
Yeah,
accept your help. You can do that.
yeah. And you can get the families together, and you a lot of times see them in the room. They'll be having games they're playing, and they're laughing, telling stories, reminiscing about things. So they do come to that piece. Maybe they'll bring some food in and kind of get together and sit down and eat and start talking. And it's the process that you can actually see day by day in their conversations that you can bring them to where they need to be, really. But yeah,
Oh, Rhonda, that's beautiful.
yeah.
What would you say is maybe the biggest lesson that your patients have taught you?
Uh, that they still want to make their own decisions. They still
Okay.
want to have a say so, and it's very important that you kind of sometimes stop talking and listen to them. Um, but yeah, that's a big thing, listening, and they want to make their own decisions whether they want something or they don't want something.
Yeah. Communicating. And again, it goes back to the overall period, our overall arching idea of this dignity that they've carried and that you want them to still have.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is my goal every day, that they have the dignity and that what they need. We keep the door, 2/3 shut, so nobody walking by can look in. We keep them covered. We have families stepping out during personal care. A lot of that stuff, that we would want for ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
the
And
price.
it's again, just like you said, it's we put ourselves in their shoes. I mean, we are all humans.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Rhonda, gosh, thank you so, so, so much for sharing your experience, for sharing part of your profession with us today and the challenges of it and the good points of it too. And in your perspective, I think
yeah,
more than anything for me, what I'll take away from this conversation is the specialness of celebrating a baby being born is just as special as celebrating the life of someone who has lived, whether it's a few years or a number of years. It's still very, very important that we celebrate those lives and we attend them with that dignity and
yeah,
allow ourselves to to let them move through this space as they're ready to.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and thank you so much for the work you do.
You're sure welcome. Thank you.